Some stories get told over and over. Every generation gets its own Batman, its own Sherlock Holmes, its own King Arthur. These tales are immortal, constantly reinvented for fresh audiences. Then, there are properties that seem destined for that same treatment. They've got the ingredients, the potential, the budget. But instead, they crash and burn so spectacularly that nobody wants to touch them again. When Hollywood smells profit, they'll usually keep trying. But sometimes, one disaster is enough. This is why Space 1999 never came back.
You're really making a thorough check.
Yes, I am.
Space 1999 wasn't some low-budget syndication gamble. This was Jerry Anderson, the mastermind behind Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet, stepping away from puppets to create his first live-action science fiction epic. ITTC Entertainment backed him with a blank check mentality, and the result was the most expensive television production in history at that point. We're talking about a show that cost more per episode than most feature films. The concept seemed bulletproof. Moonbase Alpha, a research facility housing over 300 personnel, gets torn from lunar orbit when nuclear waste stored on the far side detonates catastrophically. Commander John Koenig and his crew, now piloting an entire moon through space, encounter bizarre alien civilizations, cosmic phenomena, and philosophical questions about humanity's survival. Each week brought a new corner of the galaxy, a new mystery, a new threat. Anderson recruited Martin Landau and Barbara Bain, fresh off their Emmy-winning run on Mission Impossible, as his leads. These weren't television actors slumming it for a paycheck. They were film-caliber talent lending gravitas to what Anderson envisioned as adult science fiction. Post-2001, A Space Odyssey, audiences supposedly wanted cerebral, slow-burn storytelling that treated viewers like philosophers rather than children. The production design was stunning. Practical effects that still impress today. Moonbase Alpha's minimalist white corridors and sleek Eagle's spacecraft looked like genuine future technology, not cardboard and tinfoil. Everything screamed prestige, ambition, legitimacy. On paper, this should have redefined television science fiction. In execution, they forgot one critical ingredient, something for audiences to actually care about. Season 1, 1975 to 76. Season 1 had a vision: become the thinking person's science fiction. Slow, methodical, almost meditative pacing, borrowed from European art cinema. Characters spoke in measured tones about existential crises while drifting through the void. The aesthetic was deliberately cold: sterile white sets, clinical costumes, minimal emotional expression. This was sophisticated adult drama that happened to take place in space. Except, it was also incredibly boring. Commander Koenig had all the personality of a department store mannequin. Barbara Bain's Dr. Russell existed mainly to look concerned in a turtleneck. Supporting characters were interchangeable jumpsuit-wearing extras. The show prioritized atmosphere over storytelling, philosophy over plot, and realistic reactions over anything remotely entertaining. And the science? Laughable. The moon somehow travels faster than light between star systems. Physics took a permanent vacation. What actually worked were the visuals. Those miniature effects remain impressive decades later. A handful of episodes achieved genuinely unsettling atmosphere. The opening credits were absolutely iconic. But here's the fatal flaw. The show wanted desperately to be Stanley Kubrick's 2001, all austere meditation and cosmic wonder. Instead, it became a weekly reminder that pretentious and profound aren't synonyms. Audiences tuned out. Critics shrugged. Anderson's grand experiment was failing, and the network's response would make everything infinitely worse. Season 2, 1976 to 77. When ratings disappointed, American network executives did what they do best: panicked and demanded everything change. They brought in Fred Freiberger, a name that should make any classic sci-fi fan wince. This was the same producer who helmed Star Trek's widely criticized third season, the one fans pretend doesn't exist. His track record for fixing cerebral science fiction involved adding action, humor, and dumbing everything down. Freiberger gutted the show's identity completely. Out went the philosophical slow burn. In came Catherine Schell as Maya, an alien shapeshifter whose primary qualification seemed to be looking attractive in a jumpsuit while transforming into budget-friendly monsters weekly. The sterile white aesthetic got splashed with colors. Episodes became fun and action-packed, meaning loud, frantic, and aggressively stupid. Season 2 tried desperately to become Star Trek without understanding what made Star Trek work. Maya's transformations became repetitive gimmicks. Plots lurched between comedy and drama without landing either. The show that was too cold became too silly, alienating the few Season 1. Defenders while failing to attract new viewers. Here's the tragedy. Instead of finding middle ground, they obliterated whatever unique identity existed. Season 1 fans felt betrayed. Potential Season 2 fans saw a cheap imitation of better shows. The series was canceled. No resolution, no finale. Just Moonbase Alpha drifting eternally through space, much like the show drifted into obscurity, never to return. Why it never got resurrected. Here's where Space 1999 differs from Lost in Space or Battlestar Galactica. Nobody keeps trying to fix it. There's no endless cycle of reboots and reimaginings. The franchise died in 1977 and stayed dead. Why? Because it occupies the worst possible position in entertainment history. Too expensive to become a cult classic, too obscure to generate nostalgia, too confused to inspire anyone with a clear vision for improvement. When 1999 actually arrived, there was barely a ripple. No retrospectives, no remember this show, think pieces, no millennium-themed revival movie. Various producers floated reboot ideas throughout the 2000s. Every single one collapsed in development, even during the streaming era's desperate hunt for recognizable IP to exploit. Space 1999 remains untouched. The fundamental problem nobody solved. The premise is relentlessly depressing. There's no home to return to. No grand mission driving them forward. No enemy providing narrative structure. Just 300 people trapped on a rock hurtling through an uncaring universe, encountering random aliens before moving on. It's existential dread as a weekly series. That works for one haunting art film. It doesn't sustain episodic television, and it certainly doesn't inspire studio executives to gamble millions on a property that already failed spectacularly twice in two different directions. What made it fail? The show suffered from terminal identity crisis. Season 1 wanted to be high art cinema disguised as television, all existential dread and glacial pacing with characters who spoke like philosophy textbooks. Season 2 swung wildly toward campy action adventure, complete with a shape-shifting eye candy character and monsters that looked like rejected Doctor Who props. Neither approach worked because neither understood the assignment. Compare it to successful contemporaries. Star Trek had the Federation, a clear mission of exploration and optimism about humanity's future. Lost in Space centered on family bonds, providing warmth against the cosmic cold. Battlestar Galactica gave audiences a desperate enemy and hope of finding Earth. Space 1999 offered aimless wandering and guaranteed doom. That's not appointment television, that's a bummer. Then Star Wars landed in May 1977, midway through Season 2's broadcast. Suddenly, science fiction meant swashbuckling adventure, likable heroes, and fun. Space 1999 was the opposite of fun. It was either boring intellectualism or failed comedy. Never joy, never wonder, never the escapism audiences craved. And there's the Fred Freiberger factor, a producer whose solution for fixing thoughtful science fiction was adding gimmicks and lowering standards. He'd already damaged Star Trek's legacy. Space 1999 became his second victim. Why this story is viral worthy. This isn't just forgotten television history, it's a blueprint for modern failures. Space 1999 had everything. Massive budget, talented actors, groundbreaking effects, ambitious premise, yet it collapsed completely because nobody could answer one simple question. What story are we telling? The contrast makes it compelling. Right before Star Wars revolutionized the genre, here was a show spending movie-level money to bore audiences with pretentious nothingness, then panicking into cheap imitation. It's the what could have been that stings. Imagine if they'd found the balance between thoughtful and entertaining. The villain is perfect. Network interference. Executives who saw something unique struggling and decided the solution was making it generic. Fred Freiberger becomes the recurring antagonist in sci-fi history. The man who killed two major franchises by improving them. And the pattern still applies today. Foundation on Apple TV suffers similar problems. Gorgeous visuals, prestigious cast, expensive production, yet cold and emotionless. Raised by Wolves got too weird for its own good. Westworld lost its identity across multiple seasons. The lesson remains unlearned. Elevated doesn't mean removing everything audiences connect with emotionally. Space. 1999 is the cautionary tale studios keep ignoring. Modern parallels. Why people care now. Streaming platforms are repeating Space. 1999's mistakes with alarming frequency. They greenlight prestige science fiction that prioritizes visual spectacle and philosophical pretension over basic storytelling fundamentals, characters you care about, plots that engage, reasons to return next week. Foundation adapted Isaac Asimov's masterwork with stunning visuals and A-list actors, then forgot to make anyone interesting. It's beautiful, expensive, and frequently tedious. Season 1 Space, 1999 with better CGI. Raised by Wolves delivered bizarre imagery and half-baked mythology without coherent narrative. Westworld started brilliantly, then disappeared into its own complexity, forgetting why audiences initially cared. The pattern repeats. Studios assume smart science fiction means cold, slow, and impenetrable. When that fails, they panic and add nonsense. Random action, forced humor, unnecessary romantic subplots, making everything worse. Space, 1999 proved 50 years ago that you need more than ambition and budget. You need heart. You need characters worth following. You need a reason for audiences to invest emotionally, not just intellectually. Elevated shouldn't mean emotionless. Philosophical doesn't require boring. Hollywood keeps learning this lesson the expensive way, one failed prestige sci-fi series at a time. Space, 1999 stands as science fiction's greatest cautionary tale. A show that had literally everything except a coherent identity. Massive budget? Check talented cast. Check groundbreaking effects. Check any idea what story it wanted to tell. Crickets. The first season tried being too sophisticated for television, delivering cold philosophical musings that mistook boredom for depth. When that tanked, they hired the one producer with a proven track record of ruining cerebral sci-fi, let him inject camp and gimmicks, and somehow made it worse. It's a masterclass in how not to save a struggling series. But here's what makes this story relevant. The premise itself was always the problem. A moon blown into space carrying doomed survivors isn't inspiring. It's depressing. There's no mission, no hope, no home to reach. Just endless drifting until resources run out or some alien kills everyone. That's not entertainment. That's cosmic horror without the fun parts. Nobody's rebooted Space 1999 because nobody's figured out how to fix that fundamental flaw. The 1999 date stamps it as a period piece. The premise guarantees misery. And after 2 seasons proving that both pretentious and silly approaches fail, what's left to try? Maybe that's okay. Not every property deserves resurrection. Sometimes a spectacular failure teaches more than success ever could. Think you could crack the code? Could Space 1999 work today with the right approach? Or is the premise itself beyond saving? Drop your pitch in the comments. I want to hear how you'd fix the unfixable. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into sci-fi history's greatest disasters, smash that subscribe button. We're dissecting forgotten franchises, explaining why your favorite shows got canceled, and uncovering the patterns Hollywood refuses to learn from. More cosmic catastrophes coming soon.